Hello, welcome to Furious Driving, and today you join me at the wheel of something very rare and very unusual. Yes, I am driving a Range Rover CSK. Now, if you like reviews of unusual and interesting rare vehicles, then please do hit the like and subscribe button, hit the bell notification to find out when new stuff is coming out on the channel. Now, on with this review. Hello, welcome to Furious Driving, and today we're looking at one of the rarest classic Range Rovers in the world. Yes, this is a Range Rover CSK, one of just 200 examples built back in 1990, and perhaps one of the cars most likely to be expected to be some kind of cosseted trailer queen, but really this is as far from that as it's possible to be, so I'm really quite looking forward to taking this thing out for a drive. Let's take a look around. So the CSK came about because Land Rover wanted to celebrate 20 years of their Range Rover, which had been out since 1970. It was 1990 now, 20 years. Also, they wanted a showcase to premiere some new handling capabilities they've been working on. Again, they needed something to do that, and this was something of a promotional tool in that respect. But to celebrate that 20-year fact, they named it in honour of the guy behind the original Range Rover, Charles Spencer King, hence the initials CSK. And every single one of these cars has a CSK logo on both front wings and also on the boot. This is actually meant to be Charles Spen King's signature. However, don't go getting too excited and thinking you can make a copy of this and start signing up to mobile phone accounts left, right and centre, because although it is sort of his signature, the design team actually had him sign multiple times until they found a signature of his they actually liked enough to stick on the car. So it doesn't actually look a lot like his real signature. Now, this thing was also built to showcase a new, stiffer, sportier suspension setup that could be had on the Range Rover. So for the first time, it had front and rear anti-roll bars, which Land Rover had always resisted fitting to the car because they were worried it would limit axle articulation off-road. However, the traditional Range Rover handling is somewhat alarming, and this sorts it out to a certain extent. It also had 25% stiffer shock absorbers, or dampers in America, to make it, again, handle more car-like, if you like. This is an idea they've been exploring under Project Olympic since the 1980s to make a sporty Range Rover, a Range Rover Sport no less, an idea that will never happen. Now, being a limited edition Halo model, they threw everything at this car to make it as special and as premium and as wonderful as they possibly could. So the spec is a combination of the Vogue SE and the American market cars. Every single car came in Beluga Black, which is this deep, lustrous, glossy black you can see for miles into the depths of that paint. Every car got that. They all got these chrome bumpers front and rear with the plastic rear ends because they were referencing some of the older styling cues of previous generations of the Range Rover Classic, as it was shortly to be called. They all got the front driving lights, the fog lights and the air dam as part of the package, as well as the body colour highlighted alloy wheels. Now, something you may have noticed about this car is the number of doors, and indeed the lack thereof. It's a two-door Range Rover, and by 1990 only 4 doors were in production. However, Range Rover wanted to make a splash and a statement and stand out and do something really different, as well of course as referencing the original two-door Range Rover from 20 years previously. So we have the exact same style of two-door Range Rover as had been back in the 1970s and the early 80s, with the sliding rear windows, the huge door handle and the huge door no less. One thing is different though, on the inside we no longer have the double-ended door handle, so your passengers in the rear could open the door from the back without having to lean forward. What a clomp. That is proper Range Rover noise. Now here, under the bonnet, we will find Range Rover's venerable, or Rover's venerable in fact, 3.9 litre V8. This is the old Buick-derived Rover V8, but bored out to 3.9 litres. However, in this car, it was remapped with a new set of instructions to make it the most powerful and fastest Range Rover ever built at that time. In standard form, it was 185 horsepower and went to 114 mph, which is, wow, rapid for a 1990 Range Rover. However, as you may be able to notice, this thing has been breathed on a little in the meantime. It has fuel injection from a 4.6 litre. It has a custom management computer running it all. It's got carbon fibre ram air intake and a few other bits and bobs, which means that the whole 114 mph is no longer the top speed. The limiting factor is now the gearbox, which will explode if it goes any faster. Now the interior of this car is also somewhere very special. Not only is this the fastest, most powerful Range Rover to date in 1990, it's also the most luxurious. So they did everything they could to throw in all the SE bits, all the American spec bits, all the finest materials they had to hand to make this the best they could. Let's take a quick look around. Now, starting with the door, as I said, we no longer have the big old-fashioned 1970s huge door handle with a handle at both ends for front and rear occupants to both be able to open the door without leaving their seats. Now has the more modern plastic style door handle and a plastic door pull with a wooden insert, which is beautiful, lacquered, actually American walnut, which you'll find across the entire width of the dashboard, curving underneath, down here by the gear change and up by the electric window switches. This is unique to these cars. The American walnut is beautiful, beautiful stuff. And there's leather everywhere. The top half of the door is rich, soft, perforated leather. The bottom half is carpeted. I had to double check on some photos to make sure this wasn't a later edition, but it does appear that the CSKs did all come with twin speakers here in the door, so premium sound for 1990. Moving across the dashboard, this is the standard, well, I was going to say 1990 dashboard, but this is the same dashboard that had been going back to, well, 1970 really, with the pod which swaps from left to right hand side depending which side of the road the car will be driven on in its domestic market. The vents looking at the windscreen, the small micro T-shelf in the middle, and a cubby hole T-shelf on the other side from the binnacle, where obviously they don't need to put a steering wheel on that particular side. Being a 90s version, we have got lots of extra air conditioning ventilation running across the width of the dashboard, all in this lovely walnut. And beneath that we've got the more modern 1990 spec switches for rear fogs, interior light, rear screen heater, and you'll notice this spotlight ×2, which I guess will switch on all of the lights at once. Now here we have the heating and ventilation controls. I believe it is air conditioning which is turned on all the time. This is not the original radio, obviously. Moving back to the high-low ratio gear selector, and this particular one has an automatic gearbox. The majority of the 200 of these were built as manuals, so the autos are something of a rarity, it turns out. But one thing which is very significant here in this car is this little plaque just here. Now here we have next to the dashboard the limited edition CSK number plaque. This is car number 45 out of 200. Every one of the CSKs got one of these to indicate it was a limited edition. This wasn't the first LE that Range Rover had done, because the first Vogues in fact were a limited run in their own right, but they were just never badged as such. This is the first time that Land Rover had badged a car as a limited edition. Then moving back to these seats, which are absolutely gorgeous. They are unique to the CSK because there was no other three-door Range Rover in the range at the time, so this is the only one that got these beautiful perforated centre section, smooth leather captain's chairs basically, which are just so cool, so comfortable, just rather wonderful in every way. Unique again to the CSK. In the rear we've got the same matching leather on the rear bench, which you have to access by folding these seats forward, and we have a sunroof up here as well. Although one thing is quite exciting from my point of view, you'll notice this has got the same interior lamp as the original Range Rover from 1970, the Rover P5, the Rover P6, ST1? I can't remember, I need to check that. But yeah, this lamp has got some history to it. Now, if you want to go down a proper nerd spec rabbit hole, and if you've made it this far into the video, I imagine you do, the VIN numbers are how you can tell whether this is a genuine CSK or not. Not just the logo on the side and the badge on the dashboard, because obviously those are easily faked if you really wanted to do that. However, the VIN number is where you find out the truth. Now, going back a very long time, Rover and Land Rover have been doing, or had been doing, a thing where the VIN number tells you what the model of the car is, what its home market was going to be, left-hand drive, right-hand drive, a whole bunch of other things. These ones, interestingly though, are all marked out as a UK right-hand drive home market car, regardless where in the world they were going and whether they were left or right-hand drive or not. So they all have a VIN number that starts SALLHABM7GA, followed by a 6-digit number of around, obviously depending which model it was, which car in the production run, 460800. The only difference would be if it was an automatic, which exchanged that 7 for a 3. I bet you're glad you tuned in for that. Now, this thing sounds and smells like a regular Range Rover, but it does not rev like a regular Range Rover. okay, this does not go like a standard Range Rover. As well as the additional power from the engine upgrades that CSK gave it, it's been upgraded considerably by the owner. There's also added stiffer suspension still, so it really does feel very taut indeed. And the brakes have been upgraded quite considerably as well. Wowee, this thing is mad. So instead of the old servo which came from the factory, this now has something totally different. So it stops on a 9pence, or 6pence. I'm going to say 6pence, it's smaller than a 9pence. And whereas a standard Range Rover would roll like a cross-channel ferry taking on water, this thing, it still rolls a bit, but wow, it's a very different kettle of fish entirely. It feels almost sports car-like. Oh, sharp corner. This would be an issue in a standard 5-door Range Rover from 1990. Not in this one. Now this was not a cheap toy when it was new. The manual version was £28,500. The automatic was over 31. So this was a rare and desirable limited edition. It was an expensive investment, and times are different. Back then, limited edition cars didn't have the same kind of cachet they do now. Not like a Bugatti where they're making 12, so you've got to rush out and buy one. It took them a while to get rid of all these things, it turns out. Now, as I said at the beginning, this is not some well-kept for trailer queen that's only taken to shows and kept in a dehumidified garage. No, despite the fact that CSKs now sell for something like £60,000 to £70,000 according to the adverts I was checking out last night, this car is used not exactly daily, but it's used throughout the year. The owner has taken it up to Scotland multiple times, uses it all through the winter, uses it all, well, just all the time. He loves this thing. So although it's not his only car, it's one that gets used an awful lot, which is fantastic. It's what cars are for. This is incredibly comfortable. These beautiful leather seats are amazingly supportive. They give your back and your lumbar loads of support. They feel really good. They're a little short in the squabs, but I think Range Rover seats kind of always were. And I've just noticed it's even got a heated windscreen. Quick clear, I believe Ford call it. Of course, it's not Ford, it's pre-Ford Range Rover days. Now, incredibly, when this car first came out, people actually made fun of the fact that Range Rover had launched a 3-door sporty Range Rover. How mad was that? It was insanity. What were they thinking? What were they playing at? Well, laughs on them because, well, apart from the 3-door, but I suppose the Evoque is 3-door now, isn't it? Now, the changes the owners have made to this car have just absolutely transformed what was already the fastest Range Rover from 1990 into something absolutely phenomenal. I'm told that on the Autobahn it has gone way above the 114 mile an hour original top speed. Now, Land Rover had always been reluctant to add anti-roll bars to the Range Rover because they felt it would dilute its off-road ability with axle articulation. However, it didn't really make that much difference when they finally did it. Certainly not enough to inhibit the kind of use most Range Rovers got. Now, I've always loved a Range Rover Classic, but this just takes it to a whole new level. That Rover V8 is such an amazing, identifiable, iconic sound. It's got a unique warble, is wonderful. And this thing has got so much grunt behind it, it's fantastic. A couple of things I've noticed while we've been driving, as well as the extra infinity speakers up here in the back of the mirror housing. we've got armrests, not only in the front, but all across the back, which is nice. And something which is less good is that the adjuster for the seat back is tucked here in the middle between the seat and the transmission tunnel, which makes it really quite hard to get hold of. I'm surprised there's not an electric adjuster on this, really. The steering is, of course, quite light, as they always are on Range Rovers. But with the sharpened up suspension, it does feel, well, just a bit more crisp, really. If you want to hear more about the general Range Rover development story into the four-door facelifts and later cars, then hit the link in the description above and below for when we took a 5-door or 4-door Range Rover out a little while ago. So this car may well be big, loud, brash, silly and frankly enormous, but with this enormous glass area around it and the big square corners that you can actually see, they've raised the corners of the bonnet up in the tips. You know exactly where you are on the road, and it's really, really easy to position it exactly where you want to be, manoeuvring it, parking it, that kind of stuff. Absolute doddle, one of the easiest cars on the road to drive. I wonder if we take a swap from my Freelander for this thing. Although I do notice it does still wander a little bit, as Range Rovers are wont to. Less than usual though, less than usual. Okay, I've got to say, we're only in March, or February still in fact, but this is already creeping into the top 10 drives of the year. Oh man, this has been a good day. Oh, I like this car so much. A Range Rover should not take corners like that in that manner. That's amazing. Such a good machine. I just want to say a big thank you to Fox and Lion, who've worked on this car and made it as special as it is, and to the owner of that company, whose personal car this is as well. So thanks guys, this has been a great day out. Well, thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this ride out in this absolutely phenomenal CSK. I wanted to drive one of these for absolutely years, being a bit of a Range Rover classic nut, but I've never been in one before. I've seen them, I've never sat in one. That's another box ticked. Thank you for watching this channel and making my dreams come true. If you've liked this, please, as always, do hit like and subscribe. And if you want to help support the channel, please consider hitting the Patreon or channel membership button, which makes doing these videos so much more possible. And then, as always, join me again next time driving something completely different.